That's one of the first projects we run in 2021. So we bought 15 years of project data from Cordell. And what we found, if I take the example of the hospital, if you've been in a hospital in a capital city, it's going to have a very different effect from building an hospital in a regional town. Right? If you build a new hospital in a regional town, they probably don't have all the required people with the right expertise to basically run this hospital. Right? So they're going to have to, people will have to come from probably capital cities or somewhere else to live in this area and create jobs and basically it's going to increase the population within the regional area. If you build the same hospital in the capital cities, you probably already have all the skilled resources and labor to run this hospital. So it's not going to change anything in terms of demand and population, right? So the impact on the property market won't be as significant as it would be in a regional area. Right? So in general, for emerging market, we look at three growth drivers: lifestyle, affordability, and jobs. Okay, and for regional area, we particularly focus on jobs. Okay,
It's not just opinion, like lifestyle, affordability, and jobs. That's what years and years and years and years of data have shown us.
Yes, correct.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Dashdot Insider, the auditory epicenter for passionate property investors seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. Joining me today, this is an extremely special episode. We have Julien Mougenot, who is one of the most qualified technical people that we have in the entire company. And for the very first time on a podcast, we're going to be lifting the lid and we're going to be having a look at a lot of the Dashdot Tech. You've heard us talk a lot about our algorithms. You've heard us talk a lot about Goldie. You've heard us talk a lot about data that we get from everywhere that helps us pinpoint locations throughout Australia's suburbs, all tens of thousands of suburbs that we have, that we analyze. And finally, we're actually going to have a look inside. We're going to see what it looks like when our team log in and have a look at various dashboards. And it's going to be very, very fascinating. But first up, Julien, how are you?
Good morning, Emil. Thank you for this great introduction. Very happy to be here. I'm good, and I'm very much looking forward to this discussion.
All right. Well, let's jump straight into it for us to kick off. What do you have to show us first?
So I thought a nice way to start before we jump into the suburb selection dashboard. So the suburb selection dashboard is a tool that was developed in 2021 by Dashdot to identify emerging and falling suburbs. And this tool consumes a lot of data. So I just thought a good way to start was to give a quick overview of the data we feed into this product. And then we'll go through the suburb selection dashboard itself, and I'll explain how we identify emerging suburbs at Dashdot. How does that sound?
That sounds fantastic. Just one little note that I'd like to add is that we're talking about Dashdot's own AI. Now, sometimes when we mention AI, a lot of people start to think, oh, okay, that's ChatGPT and a whole lot of other apps that are attached to ChatGPT and things like that. But what we're talking about with Dashdot's AI is completely different. Is that right?
It is very different. Absolutely. Yes.
And we've built this from the ground up, right? Our tech team have built it from the ground up. It's not like just something that attaches to ChatGPT or something.
No, it's nothing to do with ChatGPT, although we have ChatGPT project currently being built, but the suburb selection dashboard doesn't use any of ChatGPT. It does leverage machine learning algorithm to come up with, for example, price and rent predictions, right? Plus another a lot of algorithms like trending, measuring acceleration. I'll talk about this as we go through the process. Yes.
And so our AI is not something that anybody else has developed. It's not something that anybody else can use.
It's algorithm. It's machine learning model. Let's say available to the market that we've customized to address our specific needs.
Okay. Understood. All right. Let's get into it. Let's have a look at the data.
So it happened that last week we had our Dashdot town hall. Right, so we've got this meeting about twice a month, and it's an opportunity for all Dashdot team members to catch up basically and share like update about the business, about our success or wins, client success story. And it happened that at last Dashdot town hall, I did a presentation about just that topic, which is the suburb data we feed into the suburb selection dashboard. So if you allow me, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So that's a presentation I did last week to the entire Dashdot about the data we feed into the suburb selection dashboard. And just to provide some context, as of today, we're getting data from 15 different suppliers. And through the suppliers, we received 386 different metrics, either monthly, quarterly, or annually. Okay, so that's 15 data suppliers. They send us about 386 metrics, right, on a regular basis. Just to give you a couple of examples of suppliers we use. So let's start with CoreLogic. That is probably one of the most well-known property data suppliers on the market. So from CoreLogic, we're getting data such as median price, median weekly rent, volume of sale, etc. Then we've got Cordell. Cordell is a sister company of CoreLogic, and through Cordell, we're getting project data across 29 industries. Okay, so project is very important to us for identifying emerging market because some of them, not all of them, create jobs. Jobs attract people. People need a place to live in. They start renting, and then they buy. They like the place, the suburb, and then it pushes prices up. Then we've got .id. So .id, their sole business is to forecast population, and I can confidently say they are the market leader in Australia. Now, for the side stories, there's a bit of a side story with them. Originally, the forecasting model wasn't predicting population at a suburb level, which is the level we operate at Dashdot. So they had to customize their model to address our specific needs. So, and it's been a great partnership so far.
Okay, good. So this is where we get all of our data for population, which is obviously a very, very key thing in forecasting property growth, right? Where the population's moving to. And these guys actually went the extra mile to adjust their algorithms or their data collection, whatever it is, however it is that they do that, so that we'd be able to use it properly. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so for population forecast, there's a very strong correlation with property price growth. And that's basically one of the 60 core metrics that fit into our price forecasting model. Right? So to recap, CoreLogic for, let's say, what we call suburb data, suburb-related data, Cordell for project, like infrastructure project, development projects, because they drive jobs, and .id for population forecast. Akara is also an interesting one. So Akara, what they do, they provide a score for most schools in Australia. And we use this score. We use this score for Dashdot socioeconomic index. Okay. Then we've got the RBA, the famous Reserve Bank of Australia for interest rates. So we're getting this from them. And our latest addition in the bottom right, Jobs and Skills Australia. So Jobs and Skills Australia, they provide the Internet Vacancy Index. Right? So what is it? This index counts the number of jobs advertised online. Right? And we also use these metrics in Dashdot Socioeconomic Index. Right? So it's a good way to assess the job availability in a specific region.
Okay. So altogether, we capture all of this data and then the machine learning. And as you mentioned before, machine learning is available to everyone, but it's what you do with the machine learning that becomes special and particular to Dashdot. And, we're spending a lot of money every month on capturing all the data and a lot of our team, all get looked after and paid to keep on developing the machine learning algorithms to produce the results that we're able to produce.
Correct. It's like, so the latest one we are currently using is the one, I don't know if you watched the Netflix documentary AlphaGo, very good documentary, award-winning documentary. So we're currently using the algorithm they use in this documentary for one of our new projects, actually. So it's like this AI model. It's like we give you an engine, but okay, great, you've got this great engine. If you don't know how to build a car around it, how to use it, it's a bit useless. So that's like some of the data supply that we use, which just to provide a quick overview. Now you've got two types of data suppliers. Okay, so on the left-hand side, that's what we call like the CoreLogic, the .id, Cordell, they're what we call private data providers, and on the right-hand side, they're public data providers. Now, public data providers, data is free, most of the time available online. With private data provider, you've got to pay for it. Now, with private data providers, we spend on average $13,000 a month. That's equivalent to, let's call it $160,000 per year, just on suburb data. Okay, then there's property, that the data we use to analyze property. That's another podcast in itself.
I'd also like to point out that none of that data and those sources that you just mentioned is people's private data or anything like that, because that's not really useful to us, right? How much I earn or you earn or what our debt situation is, that's not useful for forecasting a suburb. It's all macro level. It's not people's private information. So when we say it's private data, it just means that it's a private company that is aggregating the data around population trends and things like that. But we never even see anyone's personal data unless they become a client. Then, obviously then it becomes important. But, when they tell us what their income is and things like that, but we don't get anyone's private data from any companies or anything like that.
You're absolutely correct. Very good clarification. We're not getting any personal information. What I call private is just we've got to pay for it. We've got to buy it from another company, basically. Right? Maybe private, actually, when you put it in that context, is not probably the best term. Now, I've got a question for you. All right? Do you know how many data points we've collected since the creation of Dashdot to analyze suburbs? How many data points have we collected since the creation of Dashdot just to analyze suburbs? To the nearest 100 million.
To the nearest 100 million?
Yeah, I'm going to make it easy for you.
All right, so if you're asking me to the nearest 100 million, then we're going to be up in the billions, because it's not going to be 100 Correct. Or 200, 300 million. So we're going to be in the billions. So we're going to be in the billions or the tens of billions. Tens of billions sounds a bit scary. I'm going to go, we're in the billions somewhere. I'm going to guess we're probably between like 2 and 5 billion data points, something like that. You're
right. Your assumption is correct.
Okay. So if I go in the middle, if I say 3.5 billion data points, right?
You're a bit on the high-end side. Yeah.
But on the higher side. Okay. Yeah. So if we say 3 billion.
Very close. Very close.
3.1. Other way. 2.9.
The other way.
Okay, 2.9.
Sorry. Now, lower. I got 1 billion too many.
1.9.
So I'm going to...
No, 2.9?
2.9 is the answer. You're correct. So to date, we have collected 2.9 billion data points in our database, and each month we're adding an extra 5.6 million. And again, it's just to analyze suburbs in Australia. Right? Now, what do we do with this data? Good question. So we use all this data to feed our suburb selection dashboard. Okay? And that's what we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to jump onto the suburb selection dashboard. Okay. Can you see this beautiful map of Australia? Okay. So that's where we start. That's where Dashdot, basically, we've got a national approach. Okay. We look at the entire country. Okay. Now, the first thing and to identify emerging suburbs, we go through a number of steps. right? Now, the first step is to ask yourself, are you looking for suburbs with emerging market? Sorry, are you looking for suburbs with growth potential in the house market or in the unit market? They're two different markets. For example, you can have a suburb with a booming house market and a falling unit market. Okay.
So we would see that kind of situation if there's a particular area where suddenly it's become trendy to build apartment buildings, and so they're just building a ton of apartment buildings, and then there's a little bit of a squeeze on the market or something like that. People aren't buying as many. Finance becomes difficult, and so suddenly we have all of these empty apartment buildings, and the unit prices go down.
Absolutely, that's what happened in Melbourne back in a couple of years ago. So what we can do with suburb selection dashboard is really shift from one market to the other. Okay, for the example for today's demo, I'm gonna use the house market. Now, quick disclaimer. For this demo, I'm using the test environment. So all the data we're going to see is old data. Okay, that's to preserve trading secrets. Right? One more comment regarding the house unit market. So at Dashdot, we develop a set of indicators to basically track which market is achieving more growth. Right? And that's interesting because now in Australia, we're seeing some regions where you can achieve more growth in the unit market than in the house market. So we've developed a set of indicators to track this, but that's also like a topic for another podcast because it would take at least an hour just to go through that. So back to the house market. Now, as I said, there's 2.9 billion data points feeding this product, and this 2.9 billion data points feeds 4 algorithms. Okay, and we basically develop one algorithm to identify potential candidate for growth. We've got another one to identify potential candidate for cash flow. A third one for identifying suburbs with a balanced mix, so a mix of growth and cash flow. And a fourth one, what we call mixed strategies, which is a combination of any combination of the three. Okay. Now, these algorithms track the same indicators, but with different thresholds. Okay. That makes sense?
What do you mean by different thresholds? You mean they're targeting different things?
They're targeting different things. Yes. So, for example, cash flow, we're gonna focus more on the vacancy rates, okay, and the speed at which it accelerates. Where for growth, we're gonna more look at we've developed an indicator that's called the supply to demand ratio, and we're gonna look at the way how quickly it accelerates, right? And you can accelerate from 0 to 100 in 5 minutes, or you can accelerate to 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, right? So, depending on the nature of the suburb strategy we're looking at, we've got different thresholds for different indicators. Does that make sense? So, let's start. So, every month, we load the new data, we run the algorithm, and this is what the property team gets, okay? A map of Australia with all these N icons. So the N's are not for Netflix, it's for new, right? And what it means like that new potential candidates for investments, right? And that's what
right now might be a very good time for me to reiterate what you just said a little bit earlier, and that this is, for the purposes of this podcast episode today, we've used a dummy set of data. This is not the live, up-to-date data. So if you see your suburb or the suburb next door to yours highlighted green in or something like that, don't rush out and buy something, because it could be based on data that's 2 or 3 years old and it's already had its boom. It's already gone crazy and, people have made a whole lot of money. And then you don't want to be jumping in and buying just at the tail end of a boom in a particular area. So just to reiterate, this is a dummy set. It's not up to date. Of course, our team are working off the most up-to-date information, right? Like right now, today, they would have had their meeting 4 hours ago, and they would have gone through the latest information that we have. But this here, they probably went through several years ago because it's several years old now, this dummy data set that we're working off today, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So when we see this, what we're looking at, we're looking for clusters. Because what it means, it's not just like a suburb that is growing in isolation, it's the whole region, right? And it means like when it's a whole region, it means like there's a general trend, okay? And that's basically exciting. So when you look at this map, I can see like three clusters. One near the Greater Perth region, one in the Adelaide region, and a big one in Queensland around Brisbane, right? So what about we take Brisbane an example and dive into this cluster? Okay, let's do that.
Well, that is a big cluster.
That's a big cluster. So what can I see from here? Can you see? Is that not too small?
No, that's totally fine.
Perfect. So when I look at this map, I can see four clusters. One north of Brisbane, one south, one in the Gold Coast as well, and a regional one, which is, let me check, Toowoomba. So we've got one in Toowoomba. Okay, so we've got two capital city clusters, one Gold Coast, what we call like major city, and one regional. Now, the way we analyze capital cities clusters is different from the way we analyze regional clusters. So I'm going to take two examples. I'm going to start with the regional cluster. Okay? So
that makes sense. It's different. Is that because different factors influence growth in a capital city versus a regional cluster? Like,
correct.
I think I've heard you talk before about the hospitals example. If a hospital goes into a nice new area,
yes. So that's one of the first project we ran in 2021. So we bought 15 years of project data from Cordell. And what we found, if I take the example of the hospital, if you build an hospital in a capital city, it's going to have a very different effect from building an hospital in a regional town. Right? If you build a new hospital in a regional town, they probably don't have all the required, I would say, people with the right expertise to basically run this hospital. Right? So they're going to have to, people will have to come from probably capital cities or somewhere else to live in this area and create jobs and basically it's going to increase the population within the regional area. Right? If you build the same hospital in the capital cities, you probably already have all the skilled resources and labor to run this hospital. So it's not going to change anything in terms of demand and population, right? So the impact on the property market won't be as significant as it would be in a regional area, right? So in general, for emerging market, we look at three growth drivers: lifestyle, affordability, and jobs, okay? And for regional area, we particularly focus on jobs, right?
It's not just opinion, like lifestyle, affordability, and jobs. That's what years and years and years and years of data have shown us.
Yes, correct. Yes. And lifestyle, we recently, because lifestyle is very subjective, so to subsidize lifestyle, we've developed what I mentioned earlier, the Dashdot Socioeconomic Index, that is based on more tangible, it's not tangible, but more like accepted, quantifiable criteria than if you prefer to live by the beach or in the mountain or...
So we're talking like serious things.
Yeah,
serious things to evaluate.
We're talking about like school score, it's more tangible. Jobs availability, it's more tangible. Number of new businesses, more tangible. this kind of criteria. Right? Now, to assess jobs, okay, as I mentioned earlier, we use projects. So what we can do with the suburb selection dashboard, we can display projects. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, so all the light blue triangles are projects over 100 million. The blue triangle are projects over 200 million, and the dark blue projects over 500 million. Okay. Now, for the sake of this demo, I'm going to remove any project below 500 millions. All right. So that's interesting. We can see obviously a lot of high budget project running in Brisbane, probably buildings. All right. We can see a number of infrastructure projects along the corridor between Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
It looks like the highway is just dotted with dozens of infrastructure projects, and these are all the 1 billion plus.
They're all over $500 million. Over half. No, they might be over $1 billion, but they're at least 500 million.
Show up.
All right.
Well, that's a lot of projects in that corridor.
Yes. So, yeah, interesting.
Wow.
A closer look at Toowoomba, we've got two big ones. Okay. Now, what's important when we look at project, we look at project that will create long-term jobs. Right. So, for example, if you take like the creation of a solar farm, right, this type of project don't create long-term job. Right. Yes, to build a solar farm creates like you need workforce, but once it's built, you don't need many employees to run it. Right. So that wouldn't be a great project to basically drive long-term jobs and then increase population, more demand for properties, property price goes up. So let's have a look at these two main ones. So we've got one in East Toowoomba, and that's a pump hydro storage project for a value of almost 1 billion. So that's this type of projects create long-term job. And in our arsenal, we've got a number of metrics to assess this project. So we know the start date and end date. So this project is meant to start in Jan this year, or was meant to start in Jan this year. It's in planning phase, and it's meant to be completed in 2028. Now, the likelihood of reaching completion, we've developed like a matrix, likelihood of reaching completion that's in-house is 40%. Okay? But that's a good project. When I look at this, that sounds promising, and that's the type of project I like to see, and that typically drive demand in regional areas. Right? Then we've got another big one here. Let's have a look. It's a cannabis production facility for 500 million. Okay. Also supposed to start in January 2024, and that will be completed in January 2026. Now, also facilities, when they're built, you need in the same way, like to make it similar to a hospital. When they've built, you need people to run the facility, right? And that creates long-term jobs, right? So that's two big projects in the regional area, which are likely to attract workforce, and workforce that is likely to live in this place, in Toowoomba, because there's no I don't see any other close by obvious area where they could live as well. Okay, so that's promising. So when I see project, and that's just the ones over $500 million. So if I display the others, there's a couple of other projects we can see. Okay, now that's good. Okay, so then we get to the next step. We can select. So I'm going to select Rangeville, which is one of the shortlisted suburbs. And then when we have, that's where we go through a detailed data analysis. Okay, so for a given suburb, then we look at, and I'm not going to go into details for this because that will be probably part two of the second part of this podcast, because going through each of these tabs is also a longer discussion. But we look at population. So what are the main industrial employments, the population forecast, as I mentioned earlier. If we go into dwellings, okay, we look at the size of the rental market. So very good balance between owner-occupier and rental market. The preferred type of dwellings as well, which tells us what we should be buying. A number of key indicators as well that we track. Again, topic for another discussion. We've got our price and rent forecasting model. That's basically award-winning price and rent forecasting model, I should say. This is where we use advanced machine learning algorithm to forecast price and rent in this suburb 15 months into the future. And also we have a closer look at projects. Okay, so I know that within 100 kilometers, we've got 129 projects worth almost 50 billion. Okay, and that's 3.8 million per capita, right? Now, if we think 100K is too much, we can reduce the range to 50K. We tend to reduce the range when we are more in capital city, okay, because the projects are more condensed. In the regional area, we can look up to 100K, okay? All right. I'm not going to dive into this too much, but we track all the project per phase. We know the investment, the likelihood. I will talk that.
I think I can see where the 2.9 billion data points have gone because we have this for every suburb in Australia, right? Every single suburb, every infrastructure project. We've got the price and rent forecasts for every single one. We've got the machine learning that tells us whether or not where we would expect the properties to be good for growth or for cash flow or a balanced strategy or a mixed strategy. It's all kind of contained in here.
Absolutely. And here, like all the what we call polygons you see here, all the suburbs, we can basically pick any, and then I can pick this one if I want to, and then I've got all the data sets across population, dwelling, indicators. Yeah. All right, Dale. Yeah, excuse my French on this one. I'm not sure if it's the right way of saying it. Now, let's have a look at Brisbane and take a capital city example. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do for simplicity, I'm going to remove the projects. Okay. And I'm going to let's pick the North Brisbane cluster. Okay. So in capital cities, all right, most of the time, lifestyle is not an issue. Lifestyle is not an issue. And jobs aren't an issue, right? So what's more important of the three growth drivers I mentioned earlier is really affordability, right? Now, what we can do with the suburb selection dashboard, we can create customized heat map, right? Based on different metrics. So I can create a heat map displaying the median sales price, the rent, the 1-year growth, the 3-year growth. Now, for this example, I'm going to stick to the median sale price. Okay, and what I can do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Okay, and we're going to create a heat map. Okay, like this. Okay, I can check submit. Bing. Okay, here we go. So this map display the median price for the selected suburbs. Suburbs in red are those with the highest median price. Suburb in dark blue are those with the lowest median price. So what we look for is really in an ideal world, dark blue suburbs surrounded by red. Okay. So when I look at this map,
that would mean if you have a dark blue suburb and it's surrounded by red, the red is very, very expensive. The dark blue is much more affordable, and you expect things to kind of balance out, and for that cheap suburb to start getting really, really expensive. So if you can get in while a suburb's dark blue, then you can really ride a lot of the growth as it sort of comes up to the red.
Correct. Yeah. So that's what we call the ripple effect, where more expensive suburbs surround neighboring more expensive suburb are likely to push price in the surrounded cheapest suburb because of affordability, right? Makes sense? So there's a couple of interesting ones. There's this one, right? Gateholds, surrounded by more expensive suburb, but it's not one that has been shortlisted by our algorithm, right?
Because it doesn't have an N.
It doesn't have an N, yes.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't mean, it could be an interesting one, but it doesn't meet all algorithm criteria, right?
Okay.
Now, one that is interesting with an N is Kepera. So Kepera, the current median price as of March 2024 is 860,000, right?
Okay.
Now, if we look at neighboring suburbs, we've got Michelton for 1 million. Enogara, thank you, for almost 1.3. The Gap for 1.1. And Upper Kedron, for 1 million. So these suburbs, right, are over 1 million, and this one is at 860. So what do you think is going to happen?
Gut feel, unless there's something terrible in Kepera, like a prison or a toxic spill, you would expect it to start going up pretty significantly pretty soon.
Correct. And that's a very good segue to discuss the next step. So just to recap, step one, which is, do we look for emerging house market or emerging unit market? Step two, data analysis. That's what we've been through, right? Step three, then when we think, for example, like let's say Toowoomba is in the existing region, we talk to other experts in the industry. So that's step three, where it's what we call more like quality analysis, right? So the step two was we analyze the data. That's what we call quantity analysis. Step three, quality analysis, we talk to other experts, right? Because it's not just about data, right? Yeah. So this is where we work, for example, closely with Terry Ryder from Hotspotting. So we've got regular meetings with him and we say, okay, what do you think about Toowoomba? Then he goes away, does his own research, and then come back to us with a positive or negative feedback. Okay? And what we also do, what the property team does, is they start calling local real estate agents. And we have a very specific list of questions that we ask real estate agent. And the feedback we're getting from real estate agents are also positive. Right? Then, only then, okay, we decide to open the suburb for investment. Because we know the data is looking good, and we know that local expert also think the market is hot.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. So if we click on Kepera.
So if we click on Kepera.
Click on that. Then what most people are probably going to be interested in is price and rent forecasts.
Price and rent forecast. Yes.
Yeah, we can have a
quick look at the price and rent forecast from Kepera. Okay.
Yep.
Again.
Old data set.
Old data set. So maybe we probably pick Kepera like around that time, right? When the price went up. Now, or price forecast. Okay, the forecast can be with a 90% confidence over the next 15 months, would be between, on the low end, 742.
Yeah.
And the high end, 895. Right?
Okay.
So at the moment, probably I think the suburb has already realized most of its
growth.
So, and it's going sideways or a little bit up. Yeah.
Right. So to reiterate what we said before, this is an old data set. And so when we were recommending this suburb, if we were, then, as you can see on that graph there, it would have been back when there was about to be a whole lot of growth going from, that's a lot of growth right there that people would have capitalized in. And then they can make that equity gain, use that to buy their next property and their next property. So it really helps people a lot with timing the market.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, and we've got a similar one for rent. The rent is going a bit sideways as well. But since August 2020, went through the roof. And,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. So timing's important. So don't go and buy in Kepera now. Maybe.
Look, I need to have a closer look at the data and talk to expert. Just just based on the price forecast, I wouldn't, but there are many factors we take into consideration, right?
Okay, fair enough.
So between the data analysis and when we talk to expert, I think there's probably only 5% of the potential candidate that makes it. Right?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay, so
5 to 10.
Algorithm, if the algorithm and all of the data points out 20 suburbs, we'll probably accept one. If there are 200 suburbs, probably accept 10. So we're talking about highly specific property locations.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's because the data doesn't tell you everything. It's an important factor, but you also need to have boots on the ground and talk to local experts, right?
Yeah.
To better understand the dynamic, the lifestyle. Yeah.
Okay. That is super fascinating. Sort of like, as my father always used to say, statistics only tell you half the story. And of course, he was referring to sport because he thought Shane Warne was the greatest bowler ever. But statistically, Murali might be out in front. But statistics only tell you half the story. And having that human factor coming in and vetting everything and making sure that, the algorithm has set this suburb, but is it really? And being really discerning. And the other thing that's really sort of, I feel I'm learning a lot about is like, if you happen to live in a suburb, let's say that it's in Brisbane, what are the chances that you just happen to know that the one next door is one of the ones that would get an N if you actually crunch all of the data? The chances are pretty small. Like we're looking at that there, looks like Brisbane, and a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Brisbane's looking good at the moment. You know, a lot of people are saying Brisbane's a great area, Adelaide's a great area, Perth's a great area. A lot of people are saying that, but the difference between picking one of the suburbs that has an N on it that the algorithm has shown is really good for growth or cash flow, what are the chances that you're actually going to know that if you don't have access to this kind of technology? You're basically guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely correct. So let's say Capera meets all our criteria, both on a data point of view and on the expert point of view, where we can see like clear growth drivers. So then what we do, we decide then the suburb gets added to the investment list. Now, the way we do this, right, we select the suburb. Okay, that's our head of property doing this critical step, and add the suburb. Let's say, for example, we're going to add the suburb open the suburb for growth. Okay, which means this suburbs is good for growth opportunity. Right? And then we press save, and then what it does, it sends what we call a Goldie alert into our Slack, in one of the Slack channels. So you can see here. Can you see my Slack?
Yep.
Right now? So again, it's in test. It's our test environment. So it sends an alert into our property, to the property team, okay? And letting them know, that's why we call Goldie or Goldie alert, letting them know that Capera, Queensland, postcode 4054 has been added to the growth category.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
Okay. So that's basically how we add suburbs to our investment.
This is how we select suburbs that outperform the market by double digits.
Yes, correct. That's how we do it in a nutshell. And then what the property team does each morning, they log into the suburb selection dashboard. It can see all the suburbs currently open for investment. Okay? That's what I've done here. So the green dots are basically suburb open for growth. Orange, red dots are suburbs open for cash flow. Amber are suburbs open for balance, which is a mix of the two. And the purple ones are mixed strategy. It's any combination of the three. That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Now might be a really good time for me to mention another part of Dashdot Tech that we're working really, really hard on at the moment, it's actually ready, is what we call a property pathfinder. We create the portfolio growth plan because there's actually a real art, and this is something that I didn't know until I started working at Dashdot. There's a real art to choosing the order of the properties that you're going to purchase. And sometimes you need to be focused on growth and sometimes you need to be focused on cash flow. And it's not which one you feel like you need. It's which one a lender 3 or 4 or 5 years down the track is going to restrict you from borrowing because you lack it. So this is called the theory of constraints, and the 3 constraints are capital, cash flow, and credit. So what you're trying to do in purchasing the properties in the right order is to make sure that you are not having a constraint further down the track. You might think, growth is what I'm looking for, or cash flow. I really want some cash flow properties because, I want my life to be a bit easier and I want to use that cash flow to build up a deposit. You buy a couple of those and suddenly the bank is saying, or a lender is saying, well, you don't have enough capital to get into your third property. Or it could be the other way around. You could be thinking, I want growth, and you buy a couple of really good growth properties, and then 3 or 4 years down the track, the bank says, yeah, but your cash flow is not high enough. And so that means that there is a real art to making sure that you are removing those constraints so that you can go smoothly from one property to the next property, to the next property, to the next property. And it's not common sense. It's to do with banks and all of their or lenders and all of their stupid rules, right? About, you need to have this, you need to have that. So it's really, really important. And that becomes really, really important for our property team when they're finding properties for clients and when we're sort of matching the right, this is why we say the right property in the right place at the right time. It's the right property in the right place at the right time for you. Is it, what does your portfolio need right now? This algorithm helps us find the property, but before that, sometimes you need to know what type of property you're going to need next so that it can set up your next purchase as easy as possible. I've got a great podcast episode that I'm doing with Andy, who's a senior portfolio strategist at Dashdot. We're going to talk through in that podcast, we're going to talk through what are the different steps that you can go through, that you need to go through so that you can avoid that problem later down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. So the server section dashboard is really about finding the right location at the right time. The property pathfinder, it's about finding the right property. And as you mentioned, the name of the game is not to get stuck. And for that not to happen, it's very specific to each client, their financial position, and the goals they want to achieve. Okay? And some client may need to start in suburbs, in red suburbs where they need cash flow, and then they need after to buy property in the green dots. And other might be the opposite, might need to start growth to build equity. So they would need properties in the green dots. And then once they've built equity, they need a bit more cash flow properties. So that's where they would be buying into the red dots or the orange ones.
Right.
Yes. And
that's
two different products. Yes.
Yeah. To me, it has always seemed so ridiculous that the system is built in such a way that if you buy property A, then B, then C, then D, that's fine. But if you try to buy property B, then A, then D, then C, you can't and you get stuck. Even though you end up with the same number of properties and even if they all cost the same amount of money, then you still get stuck because to me, it feels silly. It feels like it's paperwork. But I think it's, as Goose has said often, getting the maximum growth or the maximum cash flow that you can out of your portfolio is not the most important thing. The most important thing is not getting stuck.
Don't get stuck. And I've made this mistake myself. So I've been in the property investment game for a number of years. And I bought number of properties, and didn't get me anywhere, really. But now, since I've got a plan, so I got a plan made 2 years ago, I know exactly the property I need to buy, type of property, when, and to achieve a clear goal. It's a bit like on Google Map, you need a point A and a point B, otherwise it doesn't work,
Right.
If you don't know.
Yeah. You can't just go out, buy a property. Yeah, let's see where this lands me in a couple of years.
Then, you need to know what you want to achieve. And then that's just so much more efficient to define the path you need to go through to achieve these goals through property investment.
Have the checkpoints.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So back to our property team, they log in each morning, and depending on the clients they're going to serve on the day, they look like for a different type of suburbs. And I think they're organized now in the specialized by states. All right. So that's basically the tool that they use every day. Then what happens once a month, right? Open suburbs, all the dots get reviewed, right? Just to see if they're still, should we leave them open for investment or should we stop buying in these locations? Now, to help with this, we've developed also another set of algorithms. We call them like warning algorithms, right? So I'm going to display this.
You need to be a very special suburb to get selected by Dashdot. If you're a suburb, the ability, it's hard to quantify.
Yeah, that's it. You get like, let's say, you need to meet very, very specific criteria. So the warning algorithm, they're kind of the same algorithm, but basically we would say our new algorithm, shortlisting algorithm. But basically what we track is when the indicators or trends go below or above the threshold we'd like to see them, okay, for, let's say, at least 3 consecutive months, okay? So if the indicators and the trends go above the required threshold or below the required thresholds, bang, you get a slap on the finger and you get a warning, right? And basically it tells where our property team, or basically our head of the property team, because he's the one doing this, need to have a closer look, right, and more attention. And then the suburb get reviewed in this entirety, right, in the same way. So we review the data, we also call the real estate agent, also talk to like-minded expert in the industry to get their opinion. Okay, so for example, I'm going to take this example. It looks like Musselbrook's got a warning. Again, all data. I'm sure Kane, if you hear us, even Goose, I think he's got a property.
Kane's one of our team members,
yes.
And he's from and lives in Musselbrook. So that's sort of why we've chosen this one to highlight.
Yeah. No need to. It's all data. No need to be alert. Goose,
no one
same.
panic. Okay.
No one panic. Okay. So what happens is, again, head of property just goes through all the different tabs, review all the data, start calling an estate agent, talk to other experts. And then a warning, by the way, doesn't mean the market is going to crash. It means most of the growth has been realized and it's likely to go sideways or a little bit up, but not like the what we call the S curve. That's what we look for, very like quick high growth, like you get in the 20-30%, like in a.
So Capera that we were looking at before, that might be an area that may have been selected by us at Dashdot, but so that's assuming that the property team were happy with the price and rental forecasts, which look like they were flattening out now. But if the team were happy with that, and then they talked to everyone with boots on the ground and talked to the real estate agents and Terry Ryder and various experts to really dial in and make sure, okay, this is really going to be a suburb that we are 100% confident that we can put clients into and we're not going to have a bad outcome. But now it may well have had an alert by now where it's not a bad suburb. It just means that it's had its growth. We're not buying in there now. The clients that managed to buy in there, if we did actually push that suburb, they've realized the growth. Their portfolio is skyrocketing. They're all happy, but now we're looking for the next. We're not looking for the next Capera.
Correct. That's it. So then we would close the suburb. All right. And that means that we're no longer buying properties for our clients because we believe most of the growth has been realized. Right. But our client, we're not going to call clients say you need to sell. It's just
no.
Hold your property. It's going to keep going up slowly, right? And most likely, like you get good rent from this property.
Yeah, but there's not a single there's not a single suburb in Australia that is always the best place to buy for the next 3 years' growth. Right? There's not a single suburb that has always been like, if you want really good growth in the next 3 years and 5 years and 10 years, buy here. Because it changes so often. Infrastructure projects change, population change, natural disasters can have an effect, all kinds of different things can have an effect on which politicians get elected in a particular area. All kinds of things can have an effect. So there's no specific suburb that's always great. And so there will be, okay, this one's coming up, good place to buy at the moment, and then it's still going to do fine, but there are better places to buy now.
It's changing all the time. That's why you need to keep a pulse on all of them, and that's what we're doing with this tool. Every month we're reviewing everything, but because we only humans, we've added algorithm and AI to it to help us, to save us time, basically. To say, hey guys, this is where you should look, right? And then we have a deeper look, and that's where we use human brain, right? So back to Musselbrook, it's got a warning, will get reviewed by the head of property, and then if all the sign points to, okay, most of the growth has been realized, we will close the suburb. And the way we do this, we just say, we'll remove the suburb from growth, and we would add it to the D list. We'll press save. And what I would do, we would send an alert to the property team, okay, telling them, alerts in Slack, telling them, but basically Musselbrook has been added to the D list. So D list, what means that it's basically means we've closed the suburb for investment and we're no longer buying there. And that's basically the life cycle suburbs are going through at Dashdot.
Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. I imagine that everybody listening has found it really, really useful to understand, first up, how much data goes into developing an algorithm that is able to produce results that get people, double digits better than the market average year after year after year. And it's because we're analyzing 5.6 million data points across all of the suburbs in Australia, collecting all of that information about infrastructure projects, about population movement, you name it, it's in there. Interest rates, jobs, school zoning, all of that sort of stuff. And it all just gets aggregated, and then the algorithm runs through everything to throw up these, and then all of the human checks that we have afterwards to make sure that we're looking really, really good for the locations that we recommend.
Correct. Yeah. I'm going to just correct one thing you said. It's 2.9 billion data points that we analyzed. And we get an extra 5.6 each month.
Yeah. It's 5.6 per month, right?
We get an extra 5.6 million per month, but we take into account the 2.9 to analyze suburbs, because we look at trends over the last, let's say, 10 to 20 years. I'm going to stop sharing. Yeah. So all of them are taken into account, and we're adding 5.6 on top each month.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, I think it's probably a good spot to end. Thank you so much for giving us a little peek, the very first ever peek inside Dashdot Tech. It's been absolutely fascinating. Julien, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And we definitely want to have you on the podcast again soon to see what other, because this is only one part of Dashdot Tech, right?
Yeah. Then we can go through
we've got another
tabs.
2 at least that I know of.
Yes. Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you again soon.
You have a good day, Emil. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.